Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a nostalgia video. So we have, Raider.io has this new feature called the BFA review. I think it's coming out for like everybody tomorrow, and this is like the beta version that is just available. So by the time you're watching this video, unless you're watching it like right when it comes out, you can probably go and see this for yourself. Maybe 12 hours. Wait, once this video is like 12 hours old, I think, is about when this feature will be out. So, this basically goes through all of your account's data and tells you what you did during BFA. And I figured it'd be fun to go through and talk about all the different tiers, all the different raids, all the different M+ bosses or M+ dungeons and stuff, and see what BFA was like for me. And then maybe you can do that for yourself as well. So first of all, we've got the raid bosses defeated here. Most actually for me was in Uldir. 460 mythic bosses in Uldir. I don't actually remember Uldir lasting that long, nor did we go back there a lot once it was no longer current content, but apparently that was the raid where I did way more than the others in terms of killing bosses. Maybe it was just, I don't even think it was that much of a longer tier than the others. I guess it was a tier where there wasn't a skip, right? You had to kill all of the bosses every time. Bod actually killed a similar number of mythic bosses, but a lot fewer normal ones. Crucible of Storms killed basically no bosses. This was one of my favorite tiers of the expansion, but it was really short, and it was really hard. And we didn't really feel much of a need to go back there for gear, so we stopped doing Unat after like a couple of times. I think we killed Unat only 3 or 4 times when it was current, and we killed Cabal like 5 times. Then Eternal Palace. This was a rough tier for the guild. This is our worst tier, I think, performance-wise, relative to our expectations. Did also the fewest of any of the big tiers in terms of number of bosses there. This one was another one where there wasn't a skip either. And then Nihilotha came around, and Nihilotha, I killed quite a lot of bosses there. Is that more mythic bosses than the others? Yeah, that's actually the most mythic bosses in Nihilotha, even though there wasn't a skip, or there was a skip eventually. This was also the dungeon that had the most bosses, so that kind of makes sense. Very few normal boss kills at this point. You can see, as the expansion moves on from the first 2 tiers, there's less and less of a need to go normal, because you just had so much, so much of the old tier gear was just better than normal anyways, if you were fully mythic geared out. And that was a lot less true. Like in Uldir, it was important to do normal for like the first 2 weeks at least. I'm surprised there were that many normal boss kills, though, from me in Uldir. Maybe it was altar stuff. And so in total, I've downed 2,845 raid bosses in all of BFA, 1,774 on Mythic, 853 on Heroic, and 218 on Normal. Pretty cool. Okay, up next, raid progress duration. This is how long I spent in each tier progressing. 48 days in Uldir, 8 resets. This was actually a pretty good tier for us relative to our server. We got server first this tier. In 8 resets, and we'd never gotten server first before, and we were like really excited about it. And then then Battle of the Zarlor came around, and like one guild on our server that was behind us caught up, and another guild transferred to our server that was, very, very good. So we ended up getting, I think server third in Battle of the Zarlor, even though we killed it in 2 fewer resets. This was a pretty rough tier for us, actually, Jaina. A lot of things went wrong for us there. Then Crucible came around. We killed it in 4 resets. That was also only good enough for server third. It was a really fun tier. We only missed server like first by a day or 2 as well. It was really a really competitive finish. Then Eternal Palace came around. This was, as I said earlier, one of the worst raid tiers, I think, for our guild in terms of our expectations. We killed it in 7 resets, and we really should have had this thing dead at least the week before this. But we kept having, we had all kinds of weird problems with our roster. We had somebody quit, who was an important member of our team right at the end, because this was right when Classic came out, and they left to go play Classic, which, yikes. And then Nihilotha came around. This was our best tier by far, I think, of any of these. We killed it in less than a month, so we killed it in February, which was pretty awesome. Not very many guilds in the world did that. We got server first by quite a bit as well. Against, as I said, the last time we got server first was Cahoon, and the server has gotten way, way more competitive since then. Tichondrius has. We got all kinds of good guilds on the server, and we came out pretty convincingly in the lead in this tier. We raided more than we had in the past. We added like an extra we added like a full day raid on a Saturday, which is really fun. It was really good time, and it paid off as well. So that was my raid progress times. Really good. I think a good progression over the expansion. I think both of these were kind of disappointing raids, but these three were all ones that I'm pretty proud of how we did. Total runs by season. Okay, so we're into Mythic Plus now. Mythic Plus, you can see here, I did 1,700 dungeons over the course of the expansion, or 41 days and 9 hours of Mythic Plus over the past 2 years. What? Let me pull up a calculator. Calculator. So 41 days over... okay, let's start by doing the multiplication. 365 times 2, that's 730. That's how many days there are in 2 years. And then 41 divided by 730. So about 5.5% of the time over the past 2 years I've been playing Mythic Plus. Pretty cool. Kind of rookie numbers compared to some of my friends, but it was actually kind of more at the start, and then I kind of got into like casting and like in season 4 I did MDI casting, I did Race to World First casting, that kind of stuff. So that ended up pulling a little bit away from my ability to actually spend a huge amount of time doing keys. Although if you look, the season where I actually did the fewest keys was season 2, Reaping. Even though I did a lot of high keys this season, I didn't do very many total keys. And then the season I did the most in was actually season 3, the Beguiling season, which, it's actually so weird here. The two affixes that I described as the least good, the ones that I disliked the most, were Infested and Beguiling. And those are the seasons where I ran more than Reaping and Awakened. Two affixes that I thought were fantastic. So kind of weird. Maybe I don't know. I think it's mostly coincidental, but worth looking at. Okay, I'm an altaholic, it says. I've run Mythic Plus on a total of 11 classes and 22 specs. The class that's missing here is Priest. I've never done a key on my Priest. I've basically never done one on my Druid either. My Druid has gotten carried through one key. So really I've done, I would say, 10 classes where I've legitimately, played the dungeon. The Warlock is, I've done 9 runs on it, and it was medium geared. I did some stuff on it. I think that it's a lot more than the Druid and the Priest, which I really basically didn't play at all. But the spec I played the most of, Outlaw Rogue, 422 runs on Outlaw Rogue, plus another 166 on Assassination, plus another 29 on Subtlety. Really wish I'd played more Subtlety in Season 1. It was really good. I only played it for the very last push week of Season 1. A lot of my top keys from that season were Subtlety from that last week, but I didn't get into it until too late. But I got on the Outlaw train pretty early in Season 2, and that was really, really favorable for me. This is a great season to play Outlaw in, and the spec just really, really was sweet there. Assassination, I played a lot of in Season 1. I didn't play too much in other seasons, so those are, I think, almost all Season 1 runs. Havoc Demon Hunter was a Season 4 thing for me, and Ellie Shaman, I think, was Season 3 that I was playing that. That was because I played that for Crucible of Storms. I switched to that for Unat progression because Elemental Shaman was super duper OP on Unat. Beast Mastery Hunter, I played quite a bit of that in Season 4. None of that whatsoever in the earlier seasons. Protection Paladin, I think I played in Season 3. It was kind of an alt that I ended up... So I was playing my Elemental Shaman as a main, and then I made this Prop Paladin as an alt. And then my guild ended up needing a tank, so I kind of switched to tank. And for a while, I was thinking I was going to play Prop Pally, and then I was like, oh, hang on. This is really hard in Raid. Like, it would be a lot better if I switched to Brewmaster, so I switched to Brewmaster. And Blood Decay, actually, in Nihilotha. I played some Blood Decay in Nihilotha, and you can see I've done a couple of runs on those specs. Yeah, a lot of specs here that I played 10 or more runs of. So overall, I think I got a pretty good sampling of how the different specs operate in M+. A lot of them. Up next, Mythic Plus account scores. So here you can see how much IO I got each season. It's a little bit tough to directly compare these because the scores just mean different things in different seasons. Season 4, for instance, score is extremely inflated because not only are the key levels that we're able to do higher than the other seasons, but also there's 2 new dungeons that add 2 new, shots of IO to your profile. So even though this is the highest number here, it's actually, I think, one of the least impressive scores in terms of relative to the player base. It would be cool actually to see how this, what top 100 or whatever this puts me in, because I think this is probably the best season I had. 3742 in season 2. I think a couple people broke 4K this season, but I don't think people were that much above that. So I do think season 2 was the season where I both did the fewest runs and also had the highest score. Mostly because I was playing Outlaw Rogue that season, and I got invited to some pretty pumper groups. As that was the season when double Outlaw or triple Outlaw was good. So just being kind of like being a free agent Outlaw Rogue, person who was just available and people knew somewhat, meant that you could get invited to all kinds of good runs whenever there was a spot. And that ended up happening for me a couple times in season 2. Actually, here I can show you. Even at the top of season 2, that got me into the top run of the season here. I got an IO injection from Nerf in this beautiful triple rogue. This is the most season 2 comp that I could imagine actually here. Prot Warrior, Resto Druid, triple rogue. Just completely disgusting balance that season, but it was a lot of fun. Just look at the top leaderboards actually for season 1. Look at all these Prot Warriors and Resto Druids and rogues. It is absurd how warped the metagame was that season. Compare that to season 4. I think season 4, if you look at this, like, metagame, I don't know. I guess a lot of these are the same teams, but we got our bear up here. We got at least 3 different DPS here. Although, definitely the main comp is this one, right? Prot Warrior, Holy Paladin, Fire Mage, Outlaw Rogue, Havoc Demon Hunter. I guess this is not actually that much more diverse than the other season. Now that I look at it here, it's kind of equally rough. There's actually only 4 DPS specs on the front page here. So all right, maybe I retract that. Maybe the balance on the front page is always going to be rough. I don't know. Let's move on to my most run dungeons. Here we go, and again and again and again. Freehold, most popular dungeon, at 219 runs. Beautiful. I would never pass up an opportunity to run a Freehold. Basically, this has got to be my favorite dungeon in the expansion. And in time 71% of the time as well, which I think is a fairly high percentage among these other dungeons. We can take a look though. Underrot actually I'm in time way more in 81%, so a higher success rate in the Underrot, but slightly fewer runs. Another dungeon that I liked a lot. Ataldazar, I think the reason my Ataldazar win rate is so high actually is that I didn't do very many of them in season 4, because Ataldazar got a lot harder in season 4 with Awakened. The obelisks. Ataldazar was like the one dungeon where the obelisks restricted your options instead of expanding them. And they were put in some really tough spots to get to. And also because it's a shorter timer, right? Anytime you're adding 4 mobs to a dungeon. So, okay, think about an affix like Reaping, Infested, or Beguiling, right? Those scale with how many mobs they add with the amount of mobs in the dungeon, right? So Ataldazar is a dungeon that has relatively few mobs. It's a short timer. And that means Reaping is going to make relatively few mobs compared to the other dungeons, and so you're not going to spend any extra time on it, right? The amount of time that Reaping takes out of the dungeon is scaling with the total number of mobs in the dungeon. Awakened does not like that, though. Awakened is 4 mobs that are the same amount of health and difficulty regardless of the dungeon. That's a flat amount, right? That doesn't scale with the amount of time in the dungeon. So the shorter time dungeons like Ataldazar have a relatively higher amount of impact from the Awakened mobs being added, and that actually led to the 30-minute timer being really tight in Ataldazar and High Keys compared to the other dungeons. The 42-minute dungeons where it's a much smaller proportion of that time that gets taken up by Awakened mobs. Waycrest Manor, then Toldagor, actually pretty high Toldagor success rate as well. Motherlode, Siege, Temple, another high success rate dungeon, although I didn't run it too much. And then we get to Shrine and King's Rest dungeons where I'm barely batting above 50% in. These are definitely the dungeons I had the hardest time in this expansion. A lot of stuff has gone wrong for me in several Shrine and several King's Rest runs. These are also the dungeons where you don't get your graveyard updated in them, or your graveyard can get updated in a way that actively hurts you. And that is, yeah, I mean, these dungeons were hard, and I will not miss them. I will miss Freehold. I'll miss Freehold a lot. And then we had the Mechagon Dungeons. Actually, Junkyard, very high success rate in very few runs, though. This was a dungeon that I liked a lot. But of course, these 2 dungeons were added later in the expansion, so that's the reason they look different on this graph here. And finally, you can see my closest key was over by 0 seconds, exactly on the timer. This was a Siege of Borealis. I remember this siege like the back of my hand. I was playing, and we had like 5 seconds left on the clock. I got in the last cannon, I shot, and I missed. I missed that cannon shot that would have killed the boss. and then I shot again and killed it with 0.0 seconds remaining. Like, if it had been a millisecond later, we would have depleted the key. That was one of the most memorable experiences actually at BFA for me, man. I got yelled at quite a bit for it, but if it had been 1 millisecond later, I don't know if I would have ever gotten to play with those people again. It was a good time. Anyways, that's been a little trip down my memory lane here in Battle for Azeroth. I'll have a little link to both my review so you can look through it, and the page where you can look through your own in the description below. It'll say coming soon if you click it until it comes out, but try again tomorrow or whatever if it's not out yet when you click on it, and then you can see this for your account and let me know if there's anything interesting. Particularly, I'm interested if you in the comments let me know ways that your like numbers deviate on these dungeons from the way mine do, or like really any of the ways that you have like some kind of different thing going on that I don't know that you have an interesting explanation for why is different. I think it'd be really interesting to compare notes there. Anyways, remember to like and subscribe and stuff. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you in the next one.